A shocking question about soulmates unravels hidden truths, secrets, and emotional tension between Jungkook and Jimin. Do you believe your soulmate can recognize your soul, even if you're pretending to be someone else? The question cut through the dim studio like a blade, quiet yet impossibly sharp, and Jungkook froze mid-step, his reflection trembling in the mirror as if it had heard something he hadn't. The fluorescent lights above flickered faintly, casting uneven shadows across the wooden floor, stretching their silhouettes into something almost unfamiliar, almost distorted. Across the room, Jimin stood barefoot, his chest rising slowly, eyes fixed, not on Jungkook's face but somewhere deeper, somewhere buried beneath layers Jungkook had spent years building. The silence between them thickened, dense like smoke, wrapping around Jungkook's throat until he couldn't even swallow. "What kind of question is that?" Jungkook finally said, but his voice betrayed him. It wasn't steady, it wasn't indifferent, it cracked just slightly like something fragile being pressed too hard. Jimin didn't smile, he didn't move closer. He simply tilted his head, observing as if Jungkook's reaction was the answer he had been waiting for all along. "You didn't answer," Jimin murmured. Jungkook forced a laugh, one that echoed hollow against the mirrored walls. "Because it doesn't make sense. Soulmates, recognizing souls, that sounds like something out of a fantasy." But even as he spoke, something cold crept along his spine. Because the way Jimin was looking at him, it wasn't playful curiosity, it wasn't casual conversation, it was searching, hunting. And Jungkook hated that it made his heart race. "You're lying again," Jimin said softly. The word again struck harder than anything else. Jungkook's jaw tightened. "I'm not." "You always do that when you lie," Jimin interrupted, stepping forward now, slow, deliberate. The faint sound of his bare feet against the wood seemed unnaturally loud. "You laugh first, like you're trying to convince yourself before anyone else." Jungkook's chest tightened. He turned away, running a hand through his hair, avoiding the mirror this time, avoiding Jimin's gaze even more. "Why are you suddenly acting like you know me better than I know myself?" Jimin stopped just a few steps behind him, close enough for Jungkook to feel his presence, his warmth, the faint scent of something soft and familiar like fabric softener, and something uniquely Jimin, comforting, dangerous. "Because I do," Jimin whispered. The words shouldn't have felt like a threat, but they did. Jungkook's pulse thundered in his ears. He turned abruptly, meeting Jimin's eyes, and for a moment the world narrowed into something unbearably small, just the two of them, standing in a space that suddenly felt too tight, too charged. "You're crossing a line," Jungkook said, his voice low now, edged with something sharper, something defensive. Jimin didn't flinch. "Then tell me to stop," Jimin replied. Jungkook opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because beneath the irritation, beneath the confusion, there was something else twisting inside him, something he had been trying not to name. A flicker of fear, not of Jimin but of what Jimin might uncover if he kept asking the right questions. Jimin took another step closer. "Tell me you don't feel it," he said, his voice barely above a breath now, but it hit Jungkook harder than a shout. "Tell me there's nothing strange about the way we met, about the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention, about the way you—" "Stop," Jungkook's voice snapped, louder than he intended. The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't heavy, it was fractured. Jimin's expression shifted, not into anger but something quieter, something more dangerous, understanding. "There it is," Jimin murmured. Jungkook's fists clenched at his sides. "You're reading too much into things." "Am I?" Jimin asked, tilting his head again, his gaze unwavering. "Then why do you look like you're about to run?" "Because I am." The thought slammed into Jungkook before he could stop it. He turned away again, packing now restless energy coiling in his limbs. The wooden floor creaked faintly under his steps, each sound echoing the chaos in his mind. "You don't get it," Jungkook said, quieter now, almost to himself. "Some things aren't meant to be questioned." "Or you're just afraid of the answer," Jimin replied. That did it. Jungkook stopped abruptly, turning back with a sharp breath. "You don't know anything about what I'm afraid of." Jimin held his gaze, and for the first time there was something raw there, something unguarded. "Then tell me." The simplicity of it made Jungkook's chest ache. "Tell me." As if it were that easy, as if he could just unravel everything. the strange coincidences, the dreams that felt too real, the moments where Jimin's presence felt less like chance and more like inevitability. As if he could explain why sometimes when Jimin looked at him like this, it felt like being seen in a way that was both comforting and terrifying. Jungkook shook his head, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. You wouldn't believe me. Try me. The challenge hung in the air. Jungkook hesitated. And in that hesitation, something shifted. Because deep down, beneath the fear, beneath the instinct to hide, there was a small, dangerous part of him that wanted to tell Jimin everything. Wanted to see what would happen if he stopped pretending, even just for a moment. His voice dropped, barely audible. What if I told you that I've seen you before? Jimin didn't react immediately, he didn't laugh, he didn't question. He just waited. Encouraging. Steady. Jungkook swallowed, his throat dry. Not like this, not in real life but in dreams for years. The words felt unreal as they left his mouth, like something pulled from a place he had kept locked away. Jimin's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes deepened. And in those dreams, Jungkook continued, his voice unsteady now, you always ask me the same thing. The silence stretched. What do I ask? Jimin whispered. Jungkook met his gaze, and for a moment, the room seemed to blur, reality bending at the edges. His heart pounded. You ask me if I recognize you, Jungkook said. Jimin's breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. And do you? He asked. Jungkook hesitated. Because the truth was, he didn't know. Or maybe he did, and that was what scared him the most. I don't know, he admitted. Jimin took a slow step closer, closing the distance between them until there was barely any space left. Then maybe, Jimin said softly, his voice laced with something that felt dangerously close to hope, you're starting to. Jungkook's chest tightened. The air felt heavier. And for the first time, the question Jimin had asked didn't sound absurd anymore. It sounded inevitable. Like something that had been waiting for him all along. The rain started before Jungkook realized he had stopped breathing. It hit the studio windows in sharp, uneven bursts, each drop streaking down the glass like something trying to escape, blurring the city lights beyond into trembling smears of gold and red. Inside, the air felt tighter, charged like the moment before something irreversible. Jungkook didn't move even as Jimin stood impossibly close, close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth radiating from him, could hear the faint rhythm of his breathing syncing dangerously with his own. You've been dreaming about me for years, Jimin said quietly, as if testing the shape of the words. Not disbelief, not mockery, something else, something heavier. Jungkook exhaled slowly, dragging a hand over his face. I told you it sounds crazy. It doesn't, Jimin replied immediately. That made Jungkook look up. There was no hesitation in Jimin's expression now, no teasing curiosity, just certainty, sharp and unwavering. That's the problem, Jungkook muttered. Jimin's brows pulled together slightly. Why is that a problem? Jungkook let out a humorless laugh, stepping back at last, needing space, needing to think, but even distance didn't help. The room still felt too small, Jimin still felt too close. Because if you're right, Jungkook said, his voice lower now, strained, then it means something is wrong with me. Jimin's eyes darkened, or it means something is real. Jungkook shook his head quickly. No, you don't understand. These dreams, they're not normal. They don't feel like dreams. His voice faltered for a second, then steadied. They feel like memories. The word landed hard. Jimin didn't speak right away this time. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, low and distant, like something awakening. Memories of what? Jimin finally asked. Jungkook hesitated. His fingers curled slightly at his sides, as if holding onto something invisible, of places I've never been, conversations I don't remember having, and you, he stopped, swallowing hard, you're always there but you're not you. Jimin's gaze sharpened, what do you mean? Jungkook took a slow breath, forcing himself to say it. You look the same, but it's like you're different, older maybe or younger, sometimes you're hurt, sometimes you're angry, but every time, his voice dropped, you look at me like you've been waiting forever. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jimin's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time since this conversation began, he looked unsettled. That's not possible, Jimin said eventually, but his voice lacked conviction. That's what I thought, Jungkook replied almost sharply. That's what I've been telling myself for years. Jimin ran a hand through his hair, packing now, mirroring Jungkook's earlier restlessness. Then why tell me now? Jungkook let out a shaky breath. Because you asked. Jimin stopped. Slowly he turned back. That's it, he said, his tone rising slightly, disbelief creeping in. You've been having these dreams, these memories about me for years, and you only say something because I asked one question. Jungkook's jaw tightened. What was I supposed to do, walk up to you and say, hey, I think I've known you in another life? Jimin stepped closer again, frustration flashing across his face. Yes, if it felt that real, yes. Jungkook blinked, caught off guard. You can't be serious. I am, Jimin snapped. Because you don't look like someone who's just imagining things, you look like someone who's been carrying this alone for too long. The words hit deeper than Jungkook expected. He looked away, his chest tightening again. I didn't want it to be real, Jungkook admitted quietly. Jimin's expression softened just slightly. Why? Jungkook hesitated. Because the answer wasn't simple. Because if it is, he said slowly, then it means everything I thought I understood about my life, about reality, is wrong. He glanced at Jimin again, his gaze conflicted. And it means you aren't just someone I met by chance. Jimin held his gaze. And that scares you, Jimin said. Jungkook didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jimin exhaled, running a hand over the back of his neck, his frustration shifting into something more focused, more determined. Okay, then let's figure it out. Jungkook frowned slightly. Figure what out? This, Jimin said, gesturing between them. Whatever this is, the dreams, the feeling, you think I don't feel something strange too? Jungkook's heart skipped. You do, he asked, his voice quieter now. Jimin hesitated for the first time. Then he nodded. Not dreams, Jimin admitted. Not like yours, but moments. Glitches, almost like déjà vu but stronger, like I know what you're about to say before you say it, like I've seen certain expressions on your face before even when I haven't. Jungkook stared at him. And you didn't think to mention that? Jungkook asked, incredulous. Jimin let out a short laugh, though there was no humor in it. I thought I was imagining things too. The realization settled between them, heavy and undeniable. For a moment neither of them spoke. The rain outside grew louder, more relentless. So what are we supposed to do? Jungkook asked finally. Jimin stepped closer again, but this time it wasn't confrontational, it was intentional. We stop pretending it's nothing, Jimin said. Jungkook's pulse quickened. And then, Jimin held his gaze, something fierce flickering in his eyes. And then we find out why it feels like we've already lost each other once. The word sent a chill down Jungkook's spine. Lost each other. Something about that phrase felt too specific, too real. You're assuming a lot, Jungkook said, though his voice lacked strength. Am I? Jimin countered softly. Jungkook didn't respond. Because deep down he knew Jimin wasn't wrong. There was something unfinished here, something unresolved. Something that refused to stay buried. Jimin reached out then, slowly, giving Jungkook time to pull away. But he didn't. Their fingers brushed. And for a split second the world fractured. A flash bright, blinding. A different room, darker, colder. Jimin, no, someone who looked like Jimin standing across from him, blood on his hands, eyes filled with something that looked like regret. Run, that version of Jimin whispered. The vision snapped. Jungkook staggered back, his breath catching violently as the studio rushed back into focus. Jimin looked just as shaken. You saw that too, Jimin said, his voice barely audible. It wasn't a question. Jungkook nodded slowly, his heart racing uncontrollably. What was that? He whispered. Jimin didn't answer immediately. His gaze was distant now, like he was trying to piece something together that refused to fully form. I think, Jimin said slowly, it's not just memories. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then what is it? Jimin looked at him again, and this time there was no hesitation. No doubt. It's a warning. The word lingered in the air, heavy with implications neither of them fully understood yet. Jungkook's chest tightened. Because somehow instinctively he knew. Whatever they were about to uncover was not going to let them walk away unchanged, the silence after that word, warning, didn't fade. It settled. It rooted itself into the space between them like something alive, something watching. Jungkook pressed his back against the mirror, cold glass seeping through his shirt, grounding him just enough to keep from spiraling. His chest still rose too fast, his pulse refusing to settle, like his body had already understood something his mind was still trying to deny. "A warning about what?" he demanded, his voice sharper now, edged with panic he refused to show fully. Jimin didn't answer immediately. That was worse. Jungkook pushed himself off the mirror, stepping forward, closing the gap again, his frustration boiling over. "You don't get to say something like that and then just, what, go quiet like it's nothing." Jimin's gaze snapped to his, equally intense, "Because I don't know yet." "That didn't look like I don't know," Jungkook shot back. "That looked like you recognized it." Jimin clenched his jaw. For a second, something flickered across his face, something too quick to fully catch but too heavy to ignore. "I've seen that place before," Jimin admitted. The air shifted. Jungkook's stomach dropped. "What?" "Not clearly," Jimin added quickly, running a hand through his damp hair, packing again, restless, agitated. "Just flashes, like pieces of something broken. But that room," he stopped, his voice lowering. "It's familiar." Jungkook stared at him, disbelief and dread tangling together. "That's not possible." "Stop saying that," Jimin snapped, turning on him suddenly. "You saw it too. That doesn't make it real." "Then what does?" Jimin demanded, stepping closer, his voice rising, emotion cracking through his usual calm. "Because this, whatever this is, it's not normal, Jungkook. People don't share hallucinations." The word hit like a slap. Jungkook's expression hardened. "So now I'm hallucinating." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant." Their voices collided, sharp and unfiltered now, tension snapping into something volatile. Jimin exhaled harshly, dragging his hands down his face. "I'm trying to make sense of this." "So am I," Jungkook fired back. "But you're acting like it already means something specific, like you've already decided what this is." "Because it feels like something," Jimin interrupted, his voice dropping again but somehow more intense than before. "It feels like we're remembering something we're not supposed to forget." The words hung there. Heavy. Dangerous. Jungkook's breath hitched. "You're talking like we've lived another life or something," he said, quieter now but no less shaken. Jimin didn't laugh. He didn't deny it. "What if we did?" Jimin asked. The question shattered whatever fragile logic Jungkook had been clinging to. "That's insane," Jungkook whispered. "Is it?" Jimin stepped even closer until there was barely space between them again. "Because explain this to me then, explain why the moment I touched you I saw something I shouldn't have been able to see." Jungkook's throat tightened. "Explain why it felt like I was losing you," Jimin continued, his voice trembling now despite his effort to stay steady. "Not just seeing something bad but feeling it, like it had already happened." Jungkook couldn't breathe. Because he felt it too. That split second of something breaking, something tearing apart. "Stop," Jungkook said, but it came out weak. Jimin shook his head. "No, not this time." His hand shot out suddenly, grabbing Jungkook's wrist, not gently but not rough either, urgent. "Look at me," Jimin demanded. Jungkook did. In the moment their eyes locked, something shifted again. Not a full vision this time. Just fragments. A voice, Jimin's voice, but not quite. "Why didn't you stay?" A scream, Jungkook's raw and broken. Hands gripping, desperate, slipping away. Jungkook gasped, yanking his hand free like he'd been burned, stumbling back. "Don't touch me like that," he snapped, but his voice betrayed him again, shaking. Jimin froze. Hurt flickered across his face, sharp and immediate. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," Jimin said quietly. "I know," Jungkook replied quickly, too quickly. He turned away again, dragging a hand through his hair, trying to steady himself. This is too much." Jimin watched him carefully, his frustration fatting into something more complicated. "You're scared," Jimin said. Jungkook let out a hollow laugh. "You're not." Jimin hesitated. Then softly, "I am." That honesty hit harder than anything else. Jungkook glanced back at him, something in his chest tightening. "Then why do you keep pushing this?" Jungkook asked. Jimin's gaze didn't waver. Because I'm more scared of ignoring it, he said. The answer was immediate, certain. Jungkook's defenses faltered just slightly. Jimin took a step closer again, slower this time, more cautious. I don't know what this is yet, Jimin continued, his voice steady but softer now. But I know it's not random, I know it's not meaningless. Jungkook swallowed hard. And I know, Jimin added, his voice dropping almost to a whisper, that whatever happened in that memory or vision or whatever it was, it mattered. A lot. Jungkook's chest ached. Because he knew that too. Then what are you saying? Jungkook asked. Jimin hesitated. For the first time since this started, uncertainty crept fully into his expression. I think, Jimin began slowly, choosing his words carefully, we're connected in a way that goes beyond this life. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. There it was. The thing he didn't want to hear out loud. That's not something you can just say like it's nothing, Jungkook muttered. I know. Then why? Because it's the only explanation that fits, Jimin interrupted, his voice firm again. Jungkook opened his eyes, frustration rising again. Or it's the explanation you want. That struck a nerve. Jimin's expression hardened, and what is that supposed to mean? It means, Jungkook said, stepping closer again, his voice sharper, more defensive, maybe you're reading into this because you want it to mean something more than it actually does. Jimin stared at him. Something shifted. Hurt, anger, something deeper. Say it properly, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook hesitated. But the tension, the confusion, the fear, it pushed the words out anyway. Maybe you want us to be something we're not. The moment the words left his mouth, he knew. Too far. Jimin's expression changed instantly. Not loud anger. Not an outburst. Something colder. More controlled. Is that what you think? Jimin asked. Jungkook swallowed. I didn't say that's what I think. But you meant it. Silence. Jungkook didn't answer. Jimin let out a slow breath, stepping back this time, creating distance where there had been none before. Then let me ask you something, Jimin said, his voice calm again but dangerously so. If this doesn't mean anything, if we're not connected in some way. He paused, his gaze locking onto Jungkook again. Then why does it hurt when you push me away? The question hit harder than anything else that night. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. Because there was no easy answer. Because the truth wasn't simple. Because pushing Jimin away didn't feel like distance. It felt like loss. And that terrified him more than anything else. Jungkook looked at him, really looked this time, at the way Jimin stood there, guarded now but still waiting, still hopping for something Jungkook didn't know how to give. I don't know, Jungkook admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Jimin's gaze softened just slightly. That's the first honest thing you've said since this started, Jimin murmured. Jungkook let out a shaky breath. I'm trying, he said. I know. The tension didn't disappear. But it shifted. Less explosive. More fragile. Jimin stepped forward again, slower this time, giving Jungkook space to move away. He didn't. I'm not asking you to believe everything right now, Jimin said quietly. I'm just asking you not to run from it. Jungkook hesitated. Then slowly he nodded. Okay, he said. Jimin's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. Okay, he echoed. For a moment neither of them spoke. The rain outside softened, turning into a steady rhythm instead of a storm. And in that quieter moment, something unspoken settled between them. Not understanding. Not clarity. But a decision. They weren't going to ignore this anymore. They weren't going to pretend it didn't matter. And maybe that was the most dangerous choice of all. The power went out without warning. 1 second the studio was dim and tense, filled with the soft rhythm of rain against glass, then everything plunged into darkness so complete it felt like the world itself had been swallowed whole. Jungkook inhaled sharply, his body reacting before his mind could catch up, muscles tightening, senses straining. Jimin, his voice cut through the dark, lower than before, edged with something raw. I'm here. Jimin's voice came from somewhere close, too close. The darkness amplified everything, the space between them collapsing into something intimate and unsettling. A flash of lightning split the room open for half a second. In that instant, Jungkook saw Jimin standing right in front of him. Closer than before. Closer than he remembered moving. Then darkness swallowed them again. You moved, Jungkook said immediately, his voice tightening. No, Jimin replied just as fast. The answer didn't match what Jungkook had seen. Thunder followed louder now, shaking something loose inside his chest. You were across the room, Jungkook insisted, stepping back instinctively, his hand brushing against something cold, the mirror again. I saw you. And I was, Jimin said, but there was hesitation now, uncertainty creeping in. I didn't move. The silence that followed felt wrong. Not quite wrong. Like something had shifted while they weren't looking. Jungkook's breathing grew uneven, then how? Another flash of lightning. This time the image lasted longer. And it wasn't just Jimin he saw. For a split second there was another figure behind him. Same height. Same silhouette. But not the same. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes too dark, expression too hollow. Then the light vanished. Jungkook staggered back, his heart slamming violently against his ribs. There's someone else in here. What? Jimin's voice sharpened instantly. There was someone behind you, Jungkook said, his words rushing out now, adrenaline flooding his system. I saw it when the lightning. That's not possible, Jimin said, but his voice wasn't steady anymore. I'm not imagining this, Jungkook snapped. I didn't say you were, Jimin replied quickly, just stay where you are. The command sent a strange ripple through Jungkook. Stay. The word echoed somewhere deeper than it should have. Another fragment. Another voice. Stay with me. Jungkook clenched his fists, trying to focus on the present. We need light. I know. There was the faint sound of movement, cautious steps against the floor, followed by the soft rustle of fabric, then a small click. Nothing. Dead, Jimin muttered under his breath. My phone's not working. Jungkook pulled his own out, his fingers trembling slightly as he pressed the power button. The screen flickered. Then went black again. What the hell, Jungkook whispered. A cold draft brushed against the back of his neck. He froze. The windows were closed. He was sure of it. Jimin, he said slowly, his voice dropping, tell me you felt that. Before Jimin could answer. A sound. Not from outside. From inside the room. A faint dragging noise, like something shifting across the floor. Both of them went completely still. Did you hear that? Jimin asked quietly. Yes. The sound came again. Closer this time. Jungkook's pulse roared in his ears. This isn't real. Then why does it feel real? Jimin whispered back. Another flash of lightning. This time they both saw it. Standing at the far end of the studio, near the mirrored wall. A figure. Not solid. Not fully there. But unmistakable. It looked like Jungkook. And not. Its eyes were wrong. Empty in a way that made Jungkook's stomach twist violently. And beside it. Another figure. Closer to Jimin's shape. But its expression was twisted, like something caught between pain and rage. The light vanished again. Jungkook couldn't breathe. You saw that, he said, his voice barely functioning. Yes. Jimin's answer came immediately this time. No denial. No hesitation. The air in the room felt heavier now, pressing against their skin, their lungs, their thoughts. What are they? Jungkook asked. Jimin didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was quieter than ever. I think, he started, then stopped as if the words themselves were dangerous. I think they're us. Jungkook's stomach dropped. That's not possible. They look like us, Jimin insisted, his voice gaining urgency, but not right, like something happened to them. Another sound. Closer. Jungkook turned his head sharply, trying to see in the dark, but there was nothing, just shadows layered over shadows. I don't like this, Jungkook muttered. Neither do I. Then we need to get out. Jimin hesitated. That hesitation was enough to set Jungkook off. What? Jungkook demanded. Don't tell me you're thinking of staying. Jimin exhaled slowly. If we leave now, we might not understand what this is. Jungkook stared at him, disbelief flaring. Are you serious? There are things in here that look like us and your first thought is to study them. They might be connected to the visions, Jimin argued. They might be dangerous, Jungkook shot back. Another flash. Closer this time. Too close. The figures weren't across the room anymore. They were halfway there. Jungkook grabbed Jimin's arm without thinking. We're leaving now. Jimin didn't pull away. But he didn't move either. Jungkook, Jimin said, his voice tight, if those are versions of us. I don't care, Jungkook snapped, fear breaking through fully now. I don't care what they are, I'm not staying here to find out what happens when they reach us. The honesty in his voice cut through everything. Jimin looked at him, really looked this time. At the fear. At the urgency. At the way his grip tightened unconsciously, like letting go wasn't an option anymore. Something shifted in Jimin's expression. Okay, he said finally. Relief hit Jungkook instantly. But it didn't last. Because the moment Jimin agreed, the temperature dropped. Violently. Like something in the room had just reacted. Jungkook's breath fogged in front of him. What the? A whisper. Right behind him. You're leaving again. Jungkook spun around, heart slamming. Nothing. But the voice. It was his. Distorted. Broken. Jimin's grip tightened on his arm. You heard that too. Jungkook nodded slowly, his throat dry. They don't want us to leave, Jimin said. That's not happening, Jungkook replied immediately, his voice hardening despite the fear crawling under his skin. We're not staying. He started pulling Jimin toward where the door should be, navigating blindly through the dark. Another step. Another. Then. Something blocked his path. Jungkook froze. He hadn't reached the door yet. But something was there. Breathing. Slow. Deliberate. Another flash of lightning. And this time, it was right in front of him. His own face. But wrong. Eyes hollow. Expression empty. You always run, it said, its voice layered with something inhuman. Jungkook's grip on Jimin tightened painfully. I'm not you, Jungkook said, forcing the words out. The figure tilted its head. Not yet. The darkness swallowed them again. Jungkook's heart pounded so hard it felt like it might break through his ribs. Behind him, Jimin's voice came, low and tense. Jungkook, I don't think these are just memories anymore. Jungkook swallowed hard. Then what are they, he asked. The answer came from the dark. Not from Jimin. From both figures. From everywhere at once. What you become if you leave each other again. The words echoed through the room, sinking deep into something Jungkook couldn't reach but couldn't ignore either. And for the first time, the fear wasn't just about what was in front of them. It was about what might happen if they made the wrong choice again. The word again refused to leave Jungkook's head. Again. It echoed, layered over the distorted voice that had spoken from the dark, until it felt less like a threat and more like a memory trying to claw its way back to the surface. Jungkook didn't move, even with that hollow version of himself standing inches away, breathing in a rhythm that didn't quite match his own. The air between them felt suffocating, thick with something ancient, something unfinished. I'm not you, Jungkook repeated, quieter this time but firmer. The figure tilted its head again, slow, unnatural, like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. You were. Behind him, Jimin tightened his grip on Jungkook's arm. Don't listen to it, Jimin said under his breath, but there was tension in his voice, a strain that hadn't been there before. Jungkook swallowed hard. You heard what it said, again. I know, Jimin replied, sharper now, but that doesn't mean it's telling the truth. A faint sound rippled through the room, like something cracking beneath the floor. Both of them froze. You think this is lying, Jungkook whispered. I think it wants us to believe something, Jimin said, his gaze locked on the second figure now, the one that mirrored him, its expression twisted into something almost unrecognizable, something colder, harsher, like a version of Jimin stripped of everything soft. And why would it want that, Jungkook asked. Before Jimin could answer, the figure in front of Jungkook stepped closer. Not walking. Gliding. The movement made Jungkook's stomach twist violently. Because it already happened, it said. Jungkook's breath hitched. That's enough, Jimin snapped suddenly, stepping forward, pulling Jungkook slightly behind him now, his posture shifting instinctively into something protective. You don't get to mess with him like that. The second figure, the one that looked like Jimin, laughed. The sound was wrong. Too hollow. Too empty. You protected him before, it said, its voice echoing strangely like multiple tones layered into one, and it still ended the same. Jimin's jaw tightened. What does that mean? He demanded. The figure didn't answer. Instead, both of them moved at once. Faster than before. Closer. The room seemed to distort with their movement, shadows stretching unnaturally along the walls, the mirrors reflecting not two but multiple versions of them, flickering in and out like broken frames of a film. Jungkook felt his chest tighten as the reflections shifted. In one mirror he stood alone. In another, Jimin was reaching for him, but Jungkook was turning away. In another, blood. Jungkook sucked in a sharp breath. Jimin, don't look at the mirrors. Too late. Jimin's eyes were already locked onto one of them. His reflection. But not quite. It was him, kneeling, hands stained, shoulders shaking, his face twisted in a grief so raw it made Jungkook's chest ache just looking at it. No, Jimin whispered. The reflection lifted its head slowly. Its eyes met Jimin's through the glass. You promised, it said. Jimin stumbled back like he'd been struck. I didn't, his voice broke, I don't remember that. But you will, the reflection replied. The room pulsed. A sharp pain shot through Jungkook's head, sudden and blinding. He gasped, gripping his temples as something forced its way in. A memory. Not a vision. Not fragmented. Clear. Too clear. A different place. Cold air biting at his skin. Jimin in front of him, desperate, reaching for him. Don't go, Jimin's voice cracked, raw with emotion. Jungkook knew himself stepping back. I don't have a choice, he heard himself say. You do, Jimin shouted, you always do. Pain twisted in Jungkook's chest as he felt it all, every emotion, every hesitation, every fear. I'll come back, he heard himself promise. Jimin's expression shattered, you said that before. The memory fractured. Jungkook collapsed to his knees, gasping, the present slamming back into him like a wave. Jungkook, Jimin dropped beside him instantly, grabbing his shoulders. Hey, look at me, what happened? Jungkook's hands trembled as he looked up, his vision still blurred at the edges. I saw it. Jimin's grip tightened. Saw what? Jungkook's voice cracked, you begging me not to leave. The words hit Jimin like a physical blow. His expression faltered. I would never, Jimin started but stopped himself. Because something in his chest twisted. Something familiar. Something that felt too real to dismiss. Jungkook shook his head weakly. It wasn't just a vision, I felt it, the same way we felt everything else. Jimin's breathing grew uneven. That doesn't mean it's real, he said, but the words lacked strength now. Jungkook looked at him, eyes wide, shaken. Then why did you say you promised just now? Jimin froze. I didn't, he said. Jungkook's voice dropped. Yes, you did. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jimin's mind raced, trying to piece together something that refused to stay still. I didn't mean to, Jimin said finally, his voice quieter now. It just came out. Another crack echoed through the room. The figures were closer now. Too close. Watching. Waiting. Jungkook pushed himself up unsteadily, grabbing Jimin's arm. We need to go now. This time Jimin didn't argue. But before they could move, the distorted version of Jungkook spoke again. If you leave now, it said, its voice almost calm, you'll forget again. Jungkook froze. What? He whispered. The figure stepped closer, its hollow gaze locking onto his. You always forget, that's why it keeps happening. Jimin stepped in front of him again. Stop talking. But Jungkook's mind was already spiraling. Forget. Again. A cycle. That's not true, Jungkook said, but the words felt weak even to him. Then why don't you remember everything? The figure asked. Jungkook didn't have an answer. Because it was right. He didn't remember everything. Just fragments. Pieces. Enough to feel but not enough to understand. Jimin's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and grounded. Even if that's true, it doesn't change what we do now. Jungkook blinked, pulling himself back to the present. What do you mean? Jimin turned to him, his expression intense, unwavering despite everything around them. It means we don't repeat it. The certainty in his voice made Jungkook's chest tighten. You don't even know what it is, Jungkook said. I know enough, Jimin replied. The figures shifted again. Closer. The room seemed to pulse with something restless, impatient. And what if we make it worse? Jungkook asked, his voice breaking slightly. What if staying leads to whatever that is? He gestured toward the broken reflections, the twisted versions of themselves. Jimin didn't look away. Then we face it together, he said. Jungkook stared at him. You don't get it, Jungkook whispered. What if the reason this happened is because we stayed? Jimin's expression flickered. For a moment. Doubt. But it didn't last. Then leaving didn't fix it either, Jimin said quietly, because it's still happening. The logic hit hard. Unavoidable. Jungkook's breath caught. So what are you saying, he asked. Jimin stepped closer, ignoring the figures now, ignoring the shifting room, focusing only on Jungkook. I'm saying, Jimin said, his voice steady despite everything, we stop running, we stop leaving, we stop pretending this connection is something we can ignore or escape. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. And if it destroys us, he asked. Jimin didn't hesitate. Then at least we'll know we didn't lose each other because we were too afraid to stay. The words settled deep. Deeper than fear. Deeper than logic. Something in Jungkook cracked, not in a painful way, but in a way that felt like something locked finally opening. He looked at Jimin, really looked this time, not just at the fear, not just at the tension, but at the unwavering resolve beneath it. And something inside him made a choice. Slowly Jungkook nodded. Okay, he said, his voice still unsteady but real, no more running. The moment the words left his mouth, the room stilled. The figures froze. The air shifted like something had been waiting for that exact answer. Jungkook felt it. A pull. Not outward. Inward. Toward something deeper than the room, deeper than the fear, deeper than the fragmented memories. Jimin felt it too. Their eyes met. And for the first time since this began, the fear wasn't the only thing between them. There was something else. Something stronger. Something that refused to break, no matter how many times it had been tested before. And this time, they didn't look away. The moment Jungkook said it, no more running, the air didn't just shift. It responded. Like something ancient had been waiting, watching, measuring every hesitation, every step backward, every unfinished choice, and finally decided they were ready. Jungkook felt it first. A pressure in his chest, not painful but overwhelming, like something pushing outward from within him, something buried too deep for too long. His breath caught as the room around them seemed to fold in on itself, the walls stretching, the mirrors bending, reflections multiplying into infinite, fractured versions of reality. Jimin, his voice came out strained, barely steady. Jimin didn't answer right away. Because he was feeling it too. Jungkook could see it in the way Jimin's body tensed, the way his hand instinctively reached out, not in panic, but in instinct, like this moment wasn't new to him. Like he had done this before. Don't fight it, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook turned sharply, don't fight what? But it was too late. The pull intensified. The darkness around them didn't just surround, it consumed. And then, it broke. The studio vanished. The rain disappeared. The mirrors shattered into nothing. And suddenly they weren't there anymore. Cold air slammed into Jungkook's lungs. Not metaphorical. Real. Sharp enough to sting. He staggered forward, his shoes crunching against something brittle, ice maybe, or frozen dirt. The sky above was colorless, an endless stretch of gray that felt too heavy, too low, like it might collapse at any moment. Where are we? Jungkook whispered, his breath visible in the air. Jimin stood a few steps away, turning slowly, taking everything in. This is. He stopped. Because recognition hit him like a blow. I've been here before, Jimin said, his voice tight. Jungkook's stomach twisted, in the visions. Jimin nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the empty expanse around them, but it wasn't this clear. The place was desolate. Endless. A field of frozen ground stretching in every direction, broken only by the faint outline of something in the distance, something tall, jagged, like the ruins of a structure that had long since collapsed. Jungkook felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. This is where it happened, he said without thinking. Jimin looked at him immediately, you know that. Jungkook swallowed, I don't know how, I just do. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with understanding. Jimin stepped closer, his gaze never leaving Jungkook's face, then we don't turn back. Jungkook let out a shaky breath, you say that like we have a choice. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line, we always have a choice. The words echoed strangely in the open space, like they carried more weight than they should. Jungkook looked past him toward the distant ruins, then what do you choose? Jimin didn't hesitate. We go there. Of course. Jungkook let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. You really don't know how to walk away, do you? Jimin's gaze softened just slightly, not from this. Something in Jungkook's chest tightened again. Not fear this time. Something more complicated. Fine, Jungkook said, then we go together. They started walking. The ground crunched under their feet with every step, the sound unnaturally loud in the otherwise dead silence. No wind, no movement, just the faint echo of their presence in a place that felt like it didn't belong to the living. After a few minutes, Jungkook spoke again, his voice quieter now. If this is a memory or whatever this is. Jimin glanced at him, then what? Jungkook hesitated, then we already know how it ends. Jimin's expression darkened, we know how it ended before. Jungkook frowned slightly, what's the difference? Jimin stopped walking. Jungkook took a few more steps before realizing, turning back, what? Jimin looked at him, something intense burning behind his eyes. The difference is we're here now, not just watching, not just remembering. Jungkook's breath caught. We can change it, Jimin said. The idea hit like a shock. Change it. Jungkook shook his head slowly, you don't know that. I don't, Jimin admitted, but I know I'm not going to stand here and let it happen the same way again. The conviction in his voice made something in Jungkook falter. What if trying to change it is what causes it? Jungkook asked. Jimin's expression tightened. For a second. Doubt again. But just a second. Then we'll deal with that, Jimin said. Jungkook stared at him, you make it sound so simple. It's not, Jimin replied immediately, it's terrifying. That honesty hit harder than confidence ever could. But I'd rather be terrified with you, Jimin added, his voice quieter now, than safe without you. Jungkook's chest ached. The words settled deep, deeper than logic, deeper than fear. Before he could respond. A sound. Not behind them. Ahead. Both of them froze. The ruins. Something moved. Jungkook's pulse spiked instantly, tell me you saw that. I saw it. The shape shifted again, clearer now. A person. No. Two. Standing at the edge of the broken structure. Waiting. Jungkook's breath turned shallow, it's them again, isn't it? Jimin didn't answer right away. But his silence said enough. Stay close, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook almost laughed at the irony, you think I'm going anywhere. They moved forward together, slower now, every step measured, tension coiling tighter with each passing second. As they got closer, the figures became clearer. Familiar. Too familiar. Jungkook felt his stomach drop. It's not just them, he whispered. Jimin's eyes narrowed slightly, what do you mean? Jungkook pointed subtly. Beyond the two figures, beyond the broken structure. There were more. Dozens. Shadows. Different shapes. Different versions. All watching. All silent. Jimin's expression hardened, how many times? Jungkook didn't finish the thought. He didn't need to. The answer was everywhere. They reached the edge of the ruins. The two figures stood directly in front of them now. Clear. Unmistakable. Jungkook's reflection. Jimin's reflection. But older. Tired. Broken in ways that went beyond physical. The older version of Jungkook spoke first. You came back. His voice wasn't distorted this time. It was real. Human. And filled with something heavy. Jungkook swallowed hard, you're me. The older Jungkook gave a faint, almost bitter smile. You always figure that part out eventually. Jimin stepped forward slightly, what is this place? The older version of Jimin answered. It's where you failed. The words hit like a punch. Jungkook's chest tightened. Failed what? A long pause. Then, each other. Silence crashed down around them. Jimin's fists clenched at his sides. That's not happening again. The older Jimin tilted his head slightly, studying him. You said that last time. Jimin's breath hitched. Jungkook stepped closer, his voice sharper now. Then tell us what we did wrong. The older Jungkook's expression darkened. You left. Jungkook's stomach twisted violently. I had a reason, Jungkook said, even though he didn't know what that reason was. You always do, the older version replied. That's the problem. Jimin stepped in, his voice rising. Then why didn't you stop him? The older Jimin's gaze flickered. For a moment. Pain. I tried, he said quietly. The weight of that answer settled heavily between them. Jungkook's chest ached. Then what happens if we don't leave this time? Jungkook asked. The older versions exchanged a glance. Something unspoken passed between them. Then, it gets worse, the older Jungkook said. Jimin's eyes narrowed. How? The answer came softly. Because staying isn't enough. The ground beneath them cracked slightly, a low rumble echoing through the frozen field. Jungkook's pulse spiked again. What does that mean? The older Jimin stepped forward. Closer. Close enough that their faces were almost level. It means, he said quietly, you don't just have to stay. His gaze shifted between them. You have to choose each other every time, no matter what it costs. The words settled deep. Heavy. Unavoidable. Jungkook felt something shift inside him again. Not fear. Not confusion. Something clearer. More dangerous. What kind of cost? Jungkook asked. The older Jungkook didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was barely above a whisper. Everything. The wind finally moved. Sharp. Cold. Violent. The shadows behind them stirred all at once, dozens of broken versions shifting in unison, their presence pressing closer, heavier, like the weight of every failure, every wrong choice, every lost moment converging into one unbearable truth. Jimin didn't move. Neither did Jungkook. Because now, it wasn't just about fear anymore. It was about what they were willing to lose to finally get it right. The wind didn't just rise, it screamed. It tore across the frozen ground like something alive, carrying with it fragments of voices that didn't belong to the present. Whispers overlapped, layered, broken, each one echoing pieces of something that had already happened too many times. Jungkook clenched his fists as the cold bit deeper into his skin, but the sensation barely registered anymore. His focus was locked on the version of himself standing just a few steps away, the older one, the one who looked like he had lived through something unbearable and survived it without ever truly escaping. You said it gets worse, Jungkook demanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Define worse. The older Jungkook didn't answer immediately. His gaze shifted not to Jungkook but to Jimin. And that alone was enough to make something twist sharply in Jungkook's chest. Don't, Jungkook snapped, whatever it is you say it to me. The older Jungkook's expression flickered, something almost like regret passing through his eyes. It's not just your choice, he said quietly. Jungkook stepped forward, anger rising now, raw and immediate. It becomes my choice the second it involves me. And it becomes his the second it costs him, the older version replied just as sharply. The words hit harder than anything else so far. Jungkook faltered for half a second. That was enough. Jimin stepped forward, placing himself slightly between them, not as a shield but as something steadier, something grounding. Stop talking around it, Jimin said, his voice low but firm. What happens if we choose each other? The wind howled louder. The shadows behind them shifted, restless, like they didn't want this question answered. The older Jimin exhaled slowly. Then he spoke. You lose everything else. Silence crashed down, heavier than the storm. Jungkook's breath caught. That's it. You think that's small? The older Jimin asked, his tone sharper now, almost bitter. You think losing everything you've built, everything you are, everything you've ever known is nothing? Jungkook shook his head, frustration boiling over. You're being vague. Because it's not simple, the older Jimin snapped back, his composure cracking for the first time. It's not one thing you lose, it's everything that ties you to the life you think you want. Jimin's expression tightened, and what does that even mean? The older Jungkook stepped forward now, his presence heavier, more imposing despite the quiet tone of his voice. It means you don't get both, he said. You don't get the life you know and him. The words hit like a direct blow. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. That doesn't make sense, he said immediately. Why would it be like that? Because it always is, the older Jungkook replied. Jimin's eyes darkened. That's not an explanation. It's the truth, the older version said. Jimin stepped closer, his voice rising again, emotion breaking through. No, it's your version of the truth, and clearly you failed, so why should we listen to you? The accusation landed hard. The older Jimin flinched. Subtle but real. You think we didn't try? He asked, his voice quieter now but more dangerous. You think we didn't fight for it? Jimin didn't hesitate. Then why are you like this? The question cut deeper than anything else. The wind stilled slightly, like even the world was waiting. The older Jungkook looked at Jimin for a long moment. Then, because we hesitated, he said. Jungkook frowned, hesitated. For a second, the older Jungkook continued. For one moment where we thought maybe we could keep both, maybe we could find a way to hold on to everything without losing anything. Jimin's jaw tightened. And that was enough, he asked. The older Jimin let out a hollow laugh. It's always enough. Jungkook felt something cold settle deep in his chest. So what you're saying, if we don't choose immediately, we lose anyway? He asked. I'm saying, the older Jungkook replied, his gaze locking onto him, that indecision is the same as walking away. The word struck something raw. Jungkook's mind flashed back. The memory. The promise. I'll come back. The hesitation before it. His stomach twisted violently. Jimin glanced at him, catching the shift instantly. You're thinking about something. Jungkook didn't answer right away. Because the realization was hitting too fast. Too hard. That memory, Jungkook said slowly, when I left. Jimin's breath caught. You hesitated, Jimin finished quietly. Jungkook nodded. The older versions didn't interrupt. They didn't need to. You didn't choose, the older Jungkook said, you delayed. Jungkook clenched his fists. I thought I had time. You didn't, the older Jimin said. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Jimin stepped closer to Jungkook now, his voice lower, steadier. Then we don't hesitate this time. Jungkook looked at him, something conflicted flickering in his eyes. You're saying that like it's easy. I'm not saying it's easy, Jimin replied immediately. I'm saying it's necessary. Jungkook's chest tightened. Necessary for what? He asked. Jimin didn't look away. For us, he said. The simplicity of it made it heavier. More real. Jungkook let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair, trying to think past the noise, the pressure, the weight of everything crashing down at once. And what happens to everything else? Jungkook asked quietly. Jimin's expression softened just slightly. I don't know, he admitted. That honesty hurt. But it also grounded something. Jungkook shook his head. That's the problem, you don't know. And neither do you, Jimin shot back, his voice rising again. But at least I'm not pretending I can avoid it. I'm not pretending anything, Jungkook snapped. You are, Jimin insisted. You're acting like there's a version of this where no one loses anything, where everything stays the same, but they just told us that version doesn't exist. Jungkook's breath grew uneven. Then what are you asking me to do? He demanded. Jimin stepped closer. Close enough that Jungkook could feel the tension radiating off him. I'm asking you, Jimin said, his voice quieter now but more intense than before, if it comes down to it, will you choose me? The question hit harder than anything else so far. Not because of what it meant, but because of what it required. Jungkook froze. His mind raced, images flashing through everything he knew, everything he had, everything that made up his life as it was now. And then, Jimin, standing in front of him, waiting, not demanding, but needing an answer. Jungkook swallowed hard. You're asking me to give up everything. Jimin's gaze didn't waver. I'm asking you not to lose me. The difference cut deep. Jungkook's chest ached. Because suddenly, it wasn't about everything else. It was about this. This moment. This choice. The older Jungkook watched silently, his expression unreadable. The older Jimin looked away. Like he already knew how this ended. Jungkook noticed. And something inside him snapped. Stop looking at him like that, Jungkook said sharply. Both older versions looked back at him. Like what? The older Jungkook asked. Like he's already lost, Jungkook replied, his voice rising. Like I've already failed. The older Jungkook's expression hardened slightly. We're not judging you. Yes, you are, Jungkook shot back. You're standing here like warnings, like proof of what happens if I don't get this right, and you're acting like you already know I won't. The accusation hung in the air. Heavy. The older Jungkook didn't deny it. That was enough. Jungkook turned back to Jimin, his breath unsteady, his thoughts racing, everything colliding into one overwhelming moment. You want an answer, Jungkook said. Jimin didn't speak. He just nodded. Jungkook's chest rose and fell sharply. Then, if it comes down to it, Jungkook began, his voice trembling but firming with each word, I won't hesitate. Jimin's eyes widened slightly. Jungkook stepped closer. I don't know what we'll lose, he continued. I don't know what this will cost, but I know what it felt like to lose you. His voice broke slightly. Even if it was just a memory, it felt real enough. Jimin's breath caught. And I'm not doing that again, Jungkook finished. The words settled between them. Final. Real. Jimin exhaled slowly, something in his expression shifting, relief, disbelief, something deeper that had been held back until now. Then don't, Jimin said softly. For a moment. Everything stilled. The wind. The shadows. The tension. Even the older versions of them seemed to pause, like something had changed in a way they hadn't expected. The older Jungkook's expression softened just slightly. That's new, he murmured. The older Jimin looked at him. You didn't say it like that before. Jungkook frowned before. But the ground beneath them began to crack again, louder this time, the frozen surface splitting in jagged lines that spread outward in every direction. The shadows reacted instantly, shifting violently, their forms distorting as the world around them started to collapse. What's happening? Jungkook demanded. The older Jungkook looked around, his expression tightening. You changed something. Jimin grabbed Jungkook's arm instinctively. That's a good thing, right? The older Jimin didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was quieter. Uncertain. It means this isn't following the same path anymore. Jungkook's heart pounded, and that's bad. The older Jimin's gaze snapped back to him. I don't know. The ground split wider. The ruins behind them began to crumble, pieces breaking apart and dissolving into nothing before they even hit the ground. The sky above darkened further, the gray turning into something deeper, heavier, like a storm about to consume everything. Jimin's grip tightened. We need to move. Jungkook nodded. Where? The older Jungkook stepped back, his form already starting to blur at the edges. Forward. Jungkook frowned. Forward where? But the answer didn't come from him. It came from the shifting horizon itself. A path. Opening. Where there had been nothing before. Jimin looked at it, then back at Jungkook. We go, he said. Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. Together, he replied. And as the world around them collapsed into something unknown, unstable, and completely uncharted, they stepped forward, not knowing what they had just changed. Only knowing. There was no going back anymore, the path shouldn't have existed. It cut through the collapsing world like a scar, thin, glowing faintly beneath their feet, stretching forward into a horizon that refused to stay still. The sky above twisted in slow, unnatural spirals, gray folding into black, black bleeding into something deeper that had no name. Jungkook didn't stop walking. He couldn't. Not because he was fearless, but because stopping felt worse. Like if he hesitated now, even for a second, everything they had just changed would snap back into place and this chance, whatever it was, would disappear. Beside him, Jimin kept pace, his shoulder brushing Jungkook's every few steps, grounding him in a reality that was otherwise unraveling. Do you feel that? Jungkook asked, his voice tight. Jimin didn't look at him. Yeah. The answer came too fast. Because whatever this was, it wasn't subtle. The air vibrated, low and constant, like a frequency just beneath hearing, pressing against their skin, their bones, their thoughts. It wasn't just outside them. It was inside. Jungkook clenched his jaw. It feels like something watching. Jimin's lips pressed into a thin line, not watching. Jungkook glanced at him, then what? Jimin's eyes flickered, scanning the shifting void around them, waiting. The word landed heavy. Jungkook didn't respond. Because he felt it too. Every step forward didn't feel like progress, it felt like approach. Toward something. Toward someone. The ground beneath them pulsed faintly with each step, like a heartbeat that wasn't theirs. The further they went, the louder it became, syncing with their breathing, their movements, until Jungkook couldn't tell where his own rhythm ended and this place began. How far does this go? Jungkook muttered. Jimin shook his head slightly. I don't think distance works the same way here. Jungkook let out a dry breath. Great, that's comforting. A flicker of something, almost humor, touched Jimin's expression, but it faded quickly. Stay focused, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook frowned. On what? On not letting this place get into your head. Too late. It already was. The moment Jimin said it, the path beneath Jungkook's feet shifted, subtly at first, then more violently. The glow dimmed, flickering, and suddenly. The world snapped. Jungkook stumbled. The path was gone. The cold air returned, but sharper, harsher, more suffocating than before. And he wasn't standing next to Jimin anymore. Jimin, Jungkook's voice echoed into nothing. No answer. Panic hit instantly, raw and unfiltered. Jimin. Silence. Then. A voice. Soft. Close. Why do you keep leaving me? Jungkook froze. His stomach dropped as he turned slowly. Jimin stood a few steps away. But something was wrong. Again. His expression was calm, too calm. His eyes held no warmth, no tension, none of the fire Jungkook had just seen moments ago. You said you wouldn't, Jimin continued, his voice quiet, almost gentle. You said this time would be different. Jungkook shook his head quickly. This isn't real. Jimin tilted his head slightly. Then why does it feel the same? Jungkook clenched his fists. Where is he? I'm right here, Jimin said. No, Jungkook snapped, you're not. For a second. Something flickered. The calm expression cracked. Just slightly. You're getting better, the not Jimin murmured. Jungkook's breath caught. What? You didn't fall for it immediately this time. The voice shifted deeper, layered wrong. Jungkook stepped back instinctively. Show yourself. The figure smiled. Not like Jimin. Never like Jimin. You already know what I am, it said. Jungkook's pulse pounded. Say it. The smile widened, stretching unnaturally. I'm the part of you that remembers how this ends. The world around them warped again. The ground beneath Jungkook cracked open, revealing nothing beneath, just an endless void swallowing everything that fell into it. Jungkook staggered back, breathing uneven. You're not real. I'm more real than your denial, it replied calmly. Jungkook shook his head. If you were real, you wouldn't need to trick me. The thing paused. Then. It laughed. Low. Sharp. Good, it said, you're starting to think instead of react. Jungkook's eyes narrowed. Where is Jimin? The entity's expression shifted again, something darker slipping through. Somewhere else, it said, facing his own version of me. Jungkook's chest tightened. Then let me go to him. You can't. The answer came instantly. Cold. Absolute. Why not? Jungkook demanded. Because this is the part where you decide if you're worth staying for. The words hit differently. Not threatening. Not mocking. Testing. Jungkook frowned. What does that even mean? The entity stepped closer, its form flickering between familiar and wrong. It means, it said softly, that every time before this you didn't just leave him. Jungkook's breath hitched. You left yourself first. Silence crashed down. Jungkook shook his head, but slower this time. That's not. Think, the entity interrupted, its voice suddenly sharper. Every hesitation, every doubt, every moment you told yourself you weren't enough, that this wasn't real, that it wasn't worth the risk. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. Because that part wasn't entirely wrong. You want to change the outcome, the entity continued, circling him now, then stop pretending this is just about him. Jungkook's voice dropped, it is about him. Then why are you still questioning whether he's worth choosing? The entity snapped. I'm not. You are, it cut in, because if you weren't, you wouldn't be afraid of what you lose. The accusation hit deep. Too deep. Jungkook clenched his fists, anger rising to cover the crack forming underneath. Being afraid doesn't mean I won't choose him. Prove it. The words landed like a challenge. Jungkook's breath grew uneven. How? The entity stopped in front of him again. Its expression shifted, less mocking now. More serious. Let go, it said. Jungkook frowned. Of what? Everything, it replied. The ground cracked wider. The void below pulsed, dark and endless. Jungkook's stomach twisted. You want me to jump? I want you to stop holding onto a version of your life that keeps leading you back here. Jungkook looked down. The void seemed to pull at him, whispering something he couldn't quite hear, but could feel. Danger. Finality. What if I disappear? Jungkook asked. The entity tilted its head. What if you do? Jungkook let out a shaky breath. That's not an answer. It's the only one you get. Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. Jungkook closed his eyes briefly. Jimin's voice echoed in his mind. I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. His chest tightened. Then, another voice. His own. I'll come back. The memory twisted painfully. No. Not again. Jungkook opened his eyes. Steady this time. I'm not leaving him, he said. The entity didn't react. I don't care what this is, Jungkook continued, his voice firmer now. I don't care what it costs, I'm done pretending I can hold on to everything. The void pulsed. The air shifted. Then jump, the entity said. Jungkook stepped closer to the edge. His heart pounded. His instincts screamed. But something deeper. Something clearer. Held him steady. He exhaled slowly. No more hesitation, he whispered. And then, he stepped forward. The world vanished instantly. No fall. No impact. Just light. Blinding. Endless. And then, a voice. Panicked. Desperate. Jungkook. His eyes snapped open. Jimin was right in front of him, gripping his shoulders tightly, his expression shaken in a way Jungkook had never seen before. You disappeared, Jimin said, his voice unsteady. You just vanished. Jungkook stared at him, breath catching. I didn't leave, Jungkook said immediately. Jimin froze. What? Jungkook's gaze locked onto his, unwavering now. I chose to stay. Something in Jimin's expression broke, relief, disbelief, something deeper all colliding at once. You idiot, Jimin breathed, his grip tightening. Do you have any idea? Jungkook cut him off. By pulling him closer. Not hesitant. Not unsure. Certainly. I'm not going anywhere, Jungkook said, his voice low but steady against the chaos still shifting around them. Jimin's breath hitched. For a moment. He didn't move. Then his grip tightened in return, like he was making sure Jungkook was actually there. Good, Jimin whispered. The space around them pulsed again. But this time, it didn't feel like something waiting. It felt like something reacting. And for the first time, the path ahead didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a consequence of the choice they had finally made. The light didn't fade, it fractured. It shattered into streaks of silver and black, slicing through the air like broken glass suspended in time, each fragment reflecting a different version of the same moment. Jungkook falling, Jungkook hesitating, Jungkook turning away. And then, the ground slammed back beneath their feet. Hard. Real. Too real. Jungkook staggered forward, his hand instinctively tightening around Jimin's sleeve as if the world might rip them apart again at any second. Don't let go, Jungkook said, his voice low but urgent. I wasn't planning to, Jimin shot back, though his tone carried something sharper than reassurance. His fingers curled around Jungkook's wrist, firm, almost possessive. Not after that. The air felt different now. Heavier. Charged. Like a storm waiting for a trigger. Jungkook scanned their surroundings, his breath still uneven. The path they had followed was gone. In its place stood something else entirely, a vast, hollow expanse that resembled a ruined city but distorted, stretched unnaturally like a memory that had been pulled too far out of shape. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, windows reflected nothing. The sky above flickered between dusk and darkness in rapid, disorienting shifts. "This isn't the same place," Jungkook muttered. "No," Jimin agreed quietly, "it's deeper." Jungkook glanced at him, deeper into what? Jimin didn't answer immediately. Because he didn't know. Or maybe. Because he did. A sudden sound cut through the silence. Footsteps. Not theirs. Jungkook's body tensed instantly. "You hear that?" Jimin nodded once, already turning toward the echo. "Yeah." The footsteps were slow. Measured. Deliberate. And getting closer. Jungkook's grip on Jimin tightened slightly. "If that's another version of you." "It's not," Jimin interrupted, his voice sharp. Jungkook blinked. "How do you know?" Jimin's jaw clenched. "Because I don't feel it this time." The footsteps stopped. Right behind them. Jungkook's heart slammed against his ribs. Neither of them turned immediately. Because something about this felt different. Dangerous in a way that wasn't psychological. This wasn't just in their heads. This was real. "Turn around," a voice said. Cold. Unfamiliar. But steady. Jungkook and Jimin exchanged a quick glance. Then, they turned. The figure standing there didn't flicker. Didn't distort. Didn't shift. It was solid. Real. And that made it worse. He looked normal. Too normal. Dark hair, calm expression, hands resting casually at his sides like he wasn't standing in a broken world that defied logic. But his eyes. They didn't belong here. They were too still. Too knowing. "Who are you?" Jungkook demanded. The man tilted his head slightly, studying them like they were the anomaly, not him. "That's not the first question you should be asking," he replied. Jimin stepped forward slightly, positioning himself just a bit in front of Jungkook without thinking. "Then give us the right one," Jimin said coldly. The man's lips curved faintly. "You're already running out of time," he said. Jungkook frowned. "Time for what?" The man's gaze shifted to him. Sharp. Focused. "Time before one of you disappears for good." Silence dropped like a blade. Jungkook felt it instantly, that subtle shift in Jimin's stance, the way his fingers tightened just a fraction more. "Explain," Jungkook said, his voice steady but edged. The man took a slow step forward. "You've already triggered it," he said, "the moment you chose to stay." Jungkook's stomach twisted. That was the point. The man smiled slightly. "Yes," he said, "but you assumed choosing each other would stabilize this place." Jimin's eyes narrowed. It did. The man's smile widened, just enough to feel wrong. It accelerated it. The ground beneath them trembled. A low, deep crack echoed somewhere far below, reverberating through the space like something enormous shifting in its sleep. Jungkook's pulse spiked. "What does that mean?" "It means," the man said calmly, "that this world doesn't exist to reward your choices." Another crack. Closer this time. "It exists to test whether they can survive consequences." Jimin stepped forward fully now, his patience snapping. "Stop talking in riddles," he said sharply. "What happens next?" The man's gaze flicked between them, calculating. "Next," he repeated softly. Then his expression hardened. "You get separated." Jungkook's grip on Jimin tightened instantly. "No." The man didn't react. "You don't get a say in it," he said. The ground split. Without warning. A violent tear ripped through the space beneath them, jagged and fast, forcing Jungkook and Jimin apart in an instant. "Jimin!" Jungkook shouted, lunging forward. But the gap widened too quickly. Jimin reached out, his fingers barely grazing Jungkook's before the distance became impossible. "Don't let go," Jungkook yelled. "I'm trying," Jimin snapped, his voice breaking with frustration. The crack spread further, the space between them distorting, stretching unnaturally as if reality itself was resisting their connection. The man watched. Unmoving. Uninterested. Why is this happening? Jungkook demanded, his voice raw. The man finally answered. Because you still think staying is enough. Jungkook's breath hitched. What else is there? The man's gaze sharpened. Understanding what you're staying for. The words hit harder than they should have. Jungkook hesitated. Just for a second. And that was enough. The space snapped. Jimin vanished. Gone. No warning. No transition. Just gone. Jimin. Jungkook's voice echoed violently through the fractured world, but there was no response. Nothing. Only silence. And the man. Still standing there. Watching. Jungkook's chest heaved, panic clawing up his throat as he turned on him, fury replacing fear in an instant. Bring him back, Jungkook said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. The man didn't move. You think this is about me? He asked calmly. Jungkook took a step forward. I don't care what it's about, you don't get to just take him. I didn't take him, the man replied. Jungkook's jaw clenched. Then where is he? The man's gaze didn't waver. Where you can't follow, he said. Something inside Jungkook snapped. Watch me, he growled. He moved without thinking, closing the distance in seconds, grabbing the man by the collar and slamming him back against nothing, against air that suddenly felt solid under impact. Tell me where he is, Jungkook demanded, his voice low and dangerous. For the first time, the man reacted. Not with fear, but with interest. That's new, he murmured. Jungkook's grip tightened. Answer me. The man met his gaze directly. If I tell you, he said, you won't like the answer. Try me. A pause. Then. He's in a version of this world where you never chose him. The words landed like a punch. Jungkook froze. What? He whispered. The man's expression remained steady. He's experiencing the outcome you've been avoiding, he continued. The version where you hesitated, where you doubted, where you walked away. Jungkook's grip faltered. No, he said, shaking his head, that's not real anymore, I changed it. The man tilted his head slightly. Did you? He asked quietly. Jungkook's breath caught. Because from his perspective, the man continued, you didn't. Silence crashed down. Heavy. Suffocating. Jungkook released him slowly, stepping back, his mind racing, trying to process something that refused to make sense. That's not how this works, Jungkook said, but his voice lacked certainty now. The man straightened his collar calmly. This place doesn't care how you think it works, he replied. Jungkook's hands clenched at his sides. Then how do I get to him? The man studied him for a long moment. Long enough to make Jungkook's pulse spike again. Finally, he spoke. You don't, he said. Jungkook's head snapped up. That's not an option. It's the only one you have, the man replied. Jungkook took a step forward again. There's always a way. The man's gaze sharpened slightly. Then find it, he said. The space around them shifted again, the fractured city beginning to collapse inward, structures folding into themselves, the sky darkening rapidly. Jungkook didn't move. Didn't run. Didn't panic. Not this time. His breathing steadied. His thoughts aligned. Because if this place was built on choices, then he wasn't done making them. I'll bring him back, Jungkook said quietly. The man watched him. Unblinking. Even if I have to break whatever this is to do it. For a brief moment, something unreadable flickered in the man's eyes. Not doubt. Not fear. Something else. Something almost approving. Then you'd better move, he said. Jungkook didn't wait for another word. The moment the ground shifted again, he ran straight into the collapsing world, into the unknown, into whatever version of reality stood between him and Jimin. And this time, he didn't hesitate. The world didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled slowly, like something that had been holding itself together out of sheer will finally deciding to let go. Jungkook ran anyway. The ground beneath him fractured with every step, pieces of the ruined city peeling away into nothingness, swallowed by the same endless void he had already chosen once. The air burned in his lungs, sharp and cold, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. Jimin, his voice tore through the shifting space, desperate, raw, refusing to be swallowed by silence. For a moment nothing answered. Then, a sound. Not a voice. A memory. Soft laughter, distant, almost drowned beneath the chaos. It didn't come from ahead or behind, it came from everywhere at once. Jungkook slowed, his chest rising and falling hard as he turned in place, searching. Jimin. The world flickered. And suddenly, he wasn't in the collapsing city anymore. He stood in a quiet room. Dimly lit. Familiar. Too familiar. The faint hum of a distant city filtered through the window, and the air smelled like rain and something warm, comforting in a way that hurt. Jungkook's breath caught. Because he knew this place. He remembered it. A version of it at least. And there, by the window, Jimin stood. Still. Silent. His back turned. Jimin, Jungkook said, softer this time, almost afraid the moment would shatter if he spoke too loudly. Jimin didn't turn. Didn't react. You're late, Jimin said quietly. The words hit differently here. Not accusing. Not angry. Just tired. Jungkook took a step forward. I didn't leave. Jimin let out a quiet breath, almost a hollow laugh. That's funny. Jungkook's chest tightened. It's the truth. Not here, Jimin replied. Slowly. He turned. And Jungkook felt it immediately. This wasn't the Jimin who had held on to him. This was the one who had been left behind. His eyes were dull, guarded, carrying a weight that Jungkook had never let himself fully imagine. You hesitated, Jimin continued, his voice calm but cutting. That was enough. Jungkook shook his head, stepping closer. That's not how it ended. Jimin tilted his head slightly. For you. The distance between them felt heavier than any physical gap. Jungkook swallowed. I'm here now. Jimin's gaze flickered just for a second. Why? The question was simple. But it carried everything. Jungkook didn't answer immediately. Because for the first time, he understood what the question really meant. Not why are you here? But, why did you come back? Why now? Why me? Jungkook exhaled slowly, steadying himself. Because I chose you, he said. Jimin's expression didn't change. Too late, he replied. The words landed harder than anything else had. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. No. Jimin looked at him, something sharp flashing behind his calm exterior. You don't get to decide that. I do, Jungkook said, his voice firmer now. Because I'm not here to fix what already happened. Jimin's eyes narrowed slightly. Then what are you here for? Jungkook took another step closer. Close enough now that he could see the subtle tension in Jimin's shoulders, the way his hands were clenched just slightly at his sides. I'm here to stay, Jungkook said. Silence filled the space. Heavy. Fragile. Jimin's gaze searched his like he was looking for something, anything, that would prove those words wrong. Stay, Jimin repeated quietly, in a version of me that already knows how this ends. Jungkook didn't look away. Then I'll change what happens next. A flicker of something broke through Jimin's expression. Anger. Pain. Hope. All tangled together. You don't get to just rewrite it, Jimin said, his voice rising slightly now. You don't get to walk in after everything and decide it means something different. I'm not rewriting it, Jungkook shot back. I'm choosing it. Jimin stepped back instinctively, like the words had pushed him. Choosing what? He demanded. You, Jungkook answered immediately. The room trembled. Subtle, but undeniable. Jimin's breath caught. Even this version of me, he challenged, his voice quieter now, almost uncertain. The one that doesn't believe you. Jungkook nodded once. Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. Just, yes. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said, everything they had avoided, everything that had been left unresolved across every version of this moment. Jimin looked down briefly, his jaw tightening. You don't know what that costs, he said. Jungkook stepped closer again. I do, he replied softly. Jimin's eyes flicked back up. Then say it, he said. Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. It costs certainty, he said. It costs control, it costs knowing how it ends. Jimin's breath hitched slightly. And you're okay with that, he asked. Jungkook's voice softened but didn't waver. I'm okay with not knowing, he said. as long as I'm not walking away. The room shook harder now. The walls cracking slightly, light bleeding through the fractures, the illusion struggling to hold. Jimin felt it too. His gaze flickered around the room before returning to Jungkook. This place won't hold if you stay, Jimin said. Jungkook nodded, then let it break. Jimin stared at him. For a long moment. Long enough that Jungkook could feel the weight of everything hanging in the balance. Then, slowly, Jimin stepped forward. Close enough that the space between them disappeared. Close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth of him, real and undeniable. You're serious, Jimin said quietly. Jungkook met his gaze. I always was, he replied. Jimin let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. And something in his expression finally shifted. Not fully. Not completely healed. But open. Just enough. The room cracked. The illusion shattered. Light surged through the space, tearing everything apart. But this time, Jungkook didn't feel like he was losing something. He felt like he was letting it go. When the world reformed, they were standing together again. In the same fractured reality. But it felt different now. Quieter. Stable in a way it hadn't been before. The man from before stood at a distance, watching them. Silent. Observing. Jungkook didn't look at him. He didn't need to. Because the choice had already been made. Jimin glanced at Jungkook, his expression still carrying traces of everything they had just faced, but something else was there now too. Something steady. You really weren't going to leave, Jimin said. Jungkook shook his head slightly. No. Jimin studied him for a moment longer. Then, a small, almost disbelieving smile touched his lips. About time, he muttered. Jungkook let out a quiet breath, tension finally easing from his shoulders. Yeah, he said, about time. The space around them settled completely. No more cracks. No more distortions. Just stillness. Not empty. Not uncertain. Just open. The man finally turned away, his presence fading as if his role in this had ended. And for the first time, there was no voice, no force, no unseen pressure trying to pull them apart. Only the quiet aftermath of everything they had faced. Jimin glanced ahead, then back at Jungkook. So, he said, a hint of something lighter in his tone now, what happens now? Jungkook looked forward, then at him. And for once, he didn't overthink it. We find out, he said. Not as a question. Not as a fear. But as a promise. And this time, whatever came next, they would face it without hesitation. Together.